saw this at the top of the program. Prime Minister has resisted pressure to bring back JobKeeper, but he has announced very significant additional support for individuals and businesses. The new support includes a boost to the COVID disaster payment up to $750 per week. Now, that's the same level as JobKeeper when it was introduced last year. Let's bring in my economics panel and pull it all apart. From Melbourne, business commentator Terry McCrann, also from Melbourne, founder of the Switzer report, switzer.com.au, Peter Switzer. So as I read this, Peter Switzer, it's JobKeeper in terms of what's going to the workers in their pockets, but perhaps less chance for big business to game the system.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair call. I know the Treasurer thinks that, during the first stage of the coronavirus lockdown in March, he basically left the whole thing open to basically any business to try and get them in there, making sure they weren't sacking workers. This payment is, I think, going to be more targeted and will actually be, I think, a better version of JobKeeper, given the kind of lockdowns we're seeing right now. They're not the same. They're not as stringent as the original ones, and I think this is a reasonable substitute for JobKeeper.
All right, let's go to this story, Terry. I know you're all across it. Crown Resorts in Melbourne, it's had to hand over another $61 million in unpaid taxes to the Victorian government. These are state gambling taxes that they haven't been paying to the right amount, we're told, for almost a decade. Who on earth is running the tax job down in Victoria?
Well, it raises all sorts of questions, Peter. I think I'd characterise this as Crown trying to get its integrity back on the instalment plan. The figure that they've actually claimed to have underpaid runs into hundreds of millions of dollars. This is about 1/5 of that amount. Now, Crown might dispute some of that tax payment. Obviously, we always do find that with taxpayers. They never quite accept what the tax commissioner of any stripe decides. But this goes back to a very unfortunate situation at the start of the year when this was uncovered inside Crown, that they had probably been underpaying their taxes, and they basically didn't come forward. Now, there's two sides to this, obviously. Crown not doing the right thing in paying the right tax, but as you say, also the authorities in Victoria, it's another indication of the way they just completely under-regulated, if I can put it kindly, Crown, not only in terms of running the casino, but also obviously on the financial side.
I mean, but, it's the biggest employer in town. Pretty much, certainly it employs tens of thousands of people. You think that you would be absolutely looking at them and double-checking the books and making sure they're paying what they should. I find it staggering. Peter, if I can go to you, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott says it's time that Australia has a bit of a national audit of what we manufacture here, what we import in from China, so we wean ourselves off our relationship with our northern neighbour. He says we should have greater manufacturing sovereignty. We need to build more here. Now, we all said this last year at the height of the pandemic. We have to get back to building and making stuff in Australia, even if it might cost us a little bit more. But are we doing that, or are we just reverting back to old habits?
Well, I think Tony's got a pretty good idea. You wouldn't have said this 2 or 3 years ago, but China has been playing a pretty tough game, and it means that they're becoming an unreliable partner. And they'll use us for iron ore, stuff that we've got and they really need. But they've been picking off industries like wine and barley and coal. And as a consequence, those businesses have really been struggling. And I think it's probably a pretty sensible thing to do. The thing is this, you won't beat the Chinese at this kind of game, but it's good not just to roll over and let them have their way. Because in many ways, Beijing's carried on. Like, there's a book written by Austin Knight some time ago called "You Be Paranoid Too If Everyone Was Out to Get You." And everyone is out to get China, but they really deserve it. Just about everything they're doing right now doesn't justify any kind of decent relationship. So I think what Tony's putting forward is something, as I say, you wouldn't have accepted 2 or 3 years ago, but might be a sensible strategy now.
Well, I think
Peter,
we've got
can I just add something?
Please, Terry, please.
Well, we've got 3 ex-prime ministers now contributing to the public debate. We've got 2 of them tweeting on Twitter, and we've got Tony Abbott that's made a substantive contribution. So I think this is the way ex-prime ministers should behave. They should actually try to give advice which could improve the nation rather than demean it and attack it, as we see so often from those other two.
Well, Tony Abbott will be very happy he hasn't been put into the same category as Rudd and Turnbull. He'll be pleased with that, Terry. Just quickly before we go, I read your column today. Are you basically saying that we're stuck with these lockdowns for the foreseeable future?
I think we are, Peter, because it's the lesson that the politicians will learn from the last month. They'll say that what happened in Victoria worked, what happened in New South Wales didn't. New South Wales arguably went too slow and too late. I'm not saying the Victorian approach is the right approach, but it's the one the politicians are going to decide is the right approach. And even New South Wales, I think, come another breakout, they will go for a tougher lockdown quicker.
OK, well, I guarantee you then Victoria won't be at number 5. We'll get even higher than that. We might crack double figures, God help us all. Terry McCrann, Peter Switzer, thank you for your time.
Peter.
Cheers.